Welcome, London Boyd. I'm really excited to finally talk to you. We've tried several times to make this happen, and there's been vomiting in my family that's prevented it, and time differences and everything. But finally, this is going to happen. So I'm really excited to talk to you and talk about your movies because it sounds amazing what you've been doing, and I'm kind of excited.
Oh, well, thank you very much for even having me on here.
Um, so you've got these three films: Liars, Fires, and Bears, and Dealer, and Rabbit Days. And Liars, Fires, and Bears was the first film, correct?
Correct, yeah. We did the festival tour with that about 2012, 2013, and had a really good run with it. So proud of that one.
Nice. So, and what kind of are they all in kind of a similar budget range, or have you gone up or down, or how has that gone for you?
Uh, Most of them are in the similar micro budget range, and not like the quote micro budget range, like actually under like 60,000 for all three of them.
Okay.
So I've heard some filmmakers say, "Oh, I'm doing a micro budget movie," and I'm like, "Oh, how much?" And they're like, 300,000. And I'm like, "Oh, whatever."
They don't have, it's not a very powerful microscope. Things
Yeah.
have to be larger. So, I mean, how did you? I mean, most people don't make it past one. I mean, that's the reality. People make one and they're exhausted by it, and it falls apart for them. So I'm wondering. I mean, the question that probably a lot of people have is how you managed to sustain momentum and keep it going across three films.
Well, I mean that's I mean I'm surprised as much as anybody, but mostly it was going through the first experience with Liars and just and seeing how everybody came together and making deals and favors, and we've got a really good community there in Vegas, especially within the UNLV group, which is the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. We had such a strong knit community there that people were willing to work like 2 or 3 days here for free or 2 days there for free. But when it came to moving on to the second one, I was actually approached by a local production company in town while I was making Rabbit Days on another project. And so I was like, I pitched them Dealer, and after another project that kind of fell through that was a little bit bigger in scope, I was like, well, how about this kind of like little experiment like Dealer? And they said yes, and we started moving forward with that. But before that, because I skipped ahead, Rabbit Days had the same opportunity that Liars, Fires, and Bears did through UNLV, which is there was a grant process through the school that awarded certain filmmakers, I think, gosh, 15,000. And then if you could raise more money on top of that, of course, you should and do. And so that's how Rabbit Days got off the ground. And we were able to coax a really good actor, Clarence Gilliard from Top Gun and Die Hard and Matlock, and probably the most cult famous one, the Chuck Norris Show, Walker, Texas Ranger, to
Hmm.
come play a part in Rabbit Days. And so that kind of came together, and we were able to raise some more money. Um, and then we were putting that together. And then as soon as that was done, I think it was a couple months later when we started prepping for Dealer.
Hmm. And so, what would you, if you were to kind of summarize your experience? I don't know if there's a series of, you know, your secrets or whatever that have managed to kind of make it possible. A few things that you think were kind of key to you to make all three happen.
Definitely the key is persistence and just not taking no for an answer. There's plenty of like as soon as you hear a no, it's one of the in my opinion, one of the best strategies to just say, okay, well, I'll figure it out and then walk away. Because as soon as you say that, the other person knows, oh, they're for real. They're going to do that no matter what.
Hmm.
I wasn't their last and only chance. And then people kind of respond to that. If you get a ball rolling, like, actually, I think I stole it from, not to be a total film nerd, Francis Ford Coppola says you can't get somebody half pregnant.
Hmm.
So the minute you get a first yes, you start kind of taking advantage of that just a little bit because they've already said yes, and then by the time you're already kind of in, um, those people are now working for the project. You're working for the project. Everybody's kind of invested because it's like, oh, this thing's going, this thing's moving. And so that's kind of what it was for those projects, even at that small level. Like we've got food for free by asking restaurants, like, hey, do you want to donate? And they didn't have to, but they were like, yeah, okay. And then just local businesses, hey, do you want to help out? And it's literally just asking. If they say no, on to the next one, on to the next one. Like and because they'll come back. We had phone calls coming back. Um, the other thing is like, we had grant money for the first two films, but and that might tell people like, oh, well, that's how you got the leg up. But we still had to raise money through like friends, family, businesses to supplement that other half of a budget. Sometimes even more than half of a budget. When it came to dealer, it was just the opportune time of somebody saying, hey, you're that guy who's making these other two movies happen. So, what else do you have? And if they're serious, then you can kind of coax them in. And like the first project I pitched them was not a micro budget movie at all. And it wasn't until like I found out that the financing was going to take a while and it was going to be an investment of a lot of time that I was just like, well, here's a smaller project. Do you think we could do this now?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like all the right elements appeared, and I was like, okay, yeah. And it was also one of those things where you don't lie to people. You tell them, this is going to be difficult. There's no money. If you don't want to do it, please say no now,
Hmm.
because nobody's going to blame you. Nobody's going to judge it. Totally understand. It's not easy. It's not. It's totally fun sometimes, but it's certainly stressful. And luckily, the people that we brought on board were, top tier, creatively, professionally.
Hmm.
Uh, so just I don't know, maybe it's luck too, luck and persistence.
Yeah, yeah. But it seems like, and I kind of say this to people is like if you can keep it going, you can build some momentum. So that
Yes,
by your third film, you've got some momentum and you've got some credibility because you've got this track record behind you that's going to help you then, become more of a magnet for resources.
absolutely. And you find that out, I think, doing the film festival route, because if you're there like every 2 years, people start going, oh yeah, I remember you, and oh, you're back, and oh, that's amazing, and what are you doing this time? And so that's kind of and it's kind of a good thing, because then they know this guy's serious.
Mm.
This guy's going to keep coming back. How do I attach myself with this person, because they're going to keep going no matter what?
Mm.
And not that they would say that to you, but it's just that feeling you get, that it's like, I mean, because I've seen countless filmmakers come back and back and back through the film festival route, and it's just like, oh man, what are they going to do next? They seem to have something sorted out that I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
So it shines a light on you, and people kind of notice that, and some people, rightly so, they want to get involved because they think, A, this could be good for my career, or B, I could make money off this guy, or C, this would be a good stepping stone for where I need to go next, regardless of what role you want to play on a production.
Hmm. Cool. And you talked about festivals, and maybe we could talk a little bit more about that, about the role that festivals have played in general in terms of boosting your film's pedigree, boosting your own momentum and pedigree, and that kind of thing.
Well, just definitely noticing the first time around, if you get into like there's, of course, everybody knows that there's several tiers of film festivals, and for micro budget indies, like without a huge star in them, you're never going to get to that top tier that's kind of run by agents and managers, and a lot more luck than you think. But right below it is still great film festivals that are really amazing, and I like to call them kind of hub festivals, only because they're they're hustling just as much as you are to get up to the top. And also, when they like something, they tell all the film festivals below them, or that they're partners with, you've got to program this. You got to take this. This is a movie you're going to want to see. This is a movie from somebody that we really like, that we responded to, and they all talk to each other, and they can travel your film more than you can by just submitting, because you initially started with that one hub and they said yes, and then next thing you know, they're making calls to all their friends going, hey, are you having problems programming? Because you're going to want this one. Trust me, you're going to want this one. And they've got their own little network set up, and it's just if you can strike iron with that first one and they like you, the rest kind of takes care of itself surprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if it doesn't work out, it's the same thing, just a lower branch on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And but it also depends on. It's not so much the festival you're submitting to first; it's the festival that's kind of playing first in the calendar year for festivals. If that makes any sense. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say like you've got a feature or a short and you submitted it to Sundance, Toronto, Tribeca, all the big ones, and nothing happened. Well, that's no reason to worry or freak out or judge yourself or anything. If you can hit up a festival that's in that second tier, especially ones that start first, they're the ones who are going to take you and your movie and say, "Oh, I recommended this to my friend. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I recommended this to this other festival. Oh, we think you'd be good for this. You might be getting an email in the next couple of weeks and blah blah blah." But if you submit to a second tier festival and it's kind of like later in that year, you're not going to get as much of that opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
only because you missed all the ones that have already played.
Okay, I see. And what would be some of the ones you would say that would come earlier in the festival season?
The ones I recommend always are definitely LA centric. Only because I haven't really done the East Coast tour as much, only lightly. But dances with films in Los Angeles is a great hub. If they like you, they send you to all their connections. Um, the LA Film Fest. If you're into shorts, there's a short specific festival for in LA. The Austin Film Festival, which comes a little bit later, but they can still help you. They can still help you if they like you. Um, but mostly, yes, starting from West Coast to East as that calendar goes is some the good advice I can give.
Yeah, yeah. And now you've gotten distribution for all three of your films, which is amazing, and is almost never happens for micro-budget filmmakers. You know, their first few films often don't get any distribution. So congrats on that. And
Thank you.
how did that happen for you? Was that through the festivals that you met people, or did you have to solicit stuff, or did you do pre-marketing?
Well, with the first one, it was just kind of a desperate need to not want the movie to disappear because I thought we had such an amazing festival run. I was kind of shocked that we didn't uh, we didn't get any meetings or anything like that, and I wasn't really privy to the whole thing at that point. And I guess we had somebody who was interested, and it fell through for whatever reason. But also, the filmmakers themselves involved with the project were going on to grad school, so they were overwhelmed with a lot of paperwork and finishing up school and all this other stuff. So I kind of took it upon myself to just start uh, emailing every single independent distributor that I admired and that I liked, and just kind of act like a dummy. Like it was totally a learning experience, and it was sometimes embarrassing and it was sometimes rewarding. But I was like, look, I don't know how this works. I really like you guys as a distributor. I've got a movie here that we've won some awards. We've toured the country with. Does this have any interest for you whatsoever? And I had countless rejections. Just saying like, this movie has no stars. This movie doesn't really have genre elements of like a horror or a thriller. It doesn't have any sex. It doesn't have any violence. It barely has bad language. Like, we don't really know. We don't know how to market this movie. And which saying that later gave me the idea for Dealer. But I'm sitting there going with this movie, which is kind of I considered it a comedy with some dramatic elements. But just people were like, yeah, that's great, and it's a good. And they never said they hated the movie. They were just like, we don't know how to sell this to people. And so finally, it wasn't until Brink Vision, which was a relatively new company at that point. I think they only had, gosh, 12 titles to their library, which now they've got a huge library. But um, it wasn't until I got to them where they were like, yeah, no, this is definitely something that we love. This is something that we think has a lot of critical appeal, and so they took it on immediately, and they were very, helpful and supportive, and they enjoyed the movie. And I think it definitely sold very, very well for them. I know that because they sent us a bunch of emails saying, hey, this is really going well. Um, but what people need to know, if they're in this micro budget world, um, the kind of deals you're going to get, unless it's a movie that just takes off at a top tier festival, then you don't need to, you got less worries. But unless it's one of those situations, the kind of deals you're going to get are definitely mostly going to be, we lease your movie, we pay for advertising, we pay for the physical creation of the discs and it going to Amazon Prime or Hulu, um, and they cover all those costs. And so if it does make any profit, it comes out of them paying for those costs.
Mm-hmm.
And once they get past that, that's when you start seeing profit.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem with that is if somebody's making that deal with you, they don't have a whole lot of advertising power to make it past that line of their expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yes, it is true that some companies are going to pad their expenses. They're going to lie to you about their expenses. They're going to say, "Oh, we made artwork for the DVD, and that cost $1 million," as a ridiculous example.
Yeah.
And so that way, if the movie ever made $1 million, they could be like, "Well, we finally paid for that DVD artwork." And that's pretty common for some less reputable companies, and you're going to get that. You just got to kind of, what I do, especially with the next two movies, what I did is I contacted other filmmakers who have their work in the distributors and say, how did the deal go? Were they good to you? What were the pros and the cons? Did they try to screw you? Or was it all wonderful?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where I came in with my next one. And it's really important not to interview just one filmmaker, because with the upcoming story, with the next two movies, Rap Days and Dealers, I contacted a filmmaker who, the current distributor that we're working with, he had nothing nice to say. Like, he was just like he had a laundry list of complaints, and I was like, oh, really? Gosh, that's okay. That doesn't sound good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I contacted the next filmmaker who worked with them more recently, and he said they're terrific. They're amazing. And here's what happened, and I couldn't be more satisfied as a low budget filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, all right, I feel good about that. And then I contacted one more filmmaker, and he had positive things to say. And I was like, well, the good outweighs the bad. I'm going to go through with this deal. But mostly, to answer your question from the beginning, it was a lot of straight up rejections, a lot of no's, and a lot of shifty deals that I was like, well, we're not doing that. And finally, it's just, if you can put the work in. And I think it took me about 7 months to find Think Vision for the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, like anything with kind of independent filmmaking, if you are in it for the long haul and you can put up with the torture, you'll find somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you make a couple good points. One is about film festivals. I think there's a general point you're making that's really important about persistence. But I've talked to filmmakers, and they make a movie for like a few $1,000, and then they send it to Sundance and South by and Toronto and Cannes and Berlin, and they're like, oh, I didn't get it at any festivals. And it's like, dude, well, your $5,000 movie or $10,000 movie is probably never going to get into one of those festivals. It's incredibly rare. Like
Absolutely.
most of those positions are locked up. So looking below that, I think, is really important, and just sticking with it and just kind of working your way down the tiers. But
Yeah, and it's not as sexy or anything, but like there's plenty of great filmmakers who did it. Like Chris Nolan, his first short went to Slam Dance. His first movie went to Slam Dance, and nobody really cared. And that's Chris Nolan.
yeah,
You got the Duplass brothers who kind of took over Austin, not South by Southwest, that came later, but Austin. And they had all their mumblecore movies and all that, and it took growth and persistence. It wasn't right out of the bat your Quentin Tarantino or Robert Rodriguez.
yeah, yeah. But also, even with distributors, right? That you sent it out for months and months and months. before you got a positive response. That you can't just, that rejection is, you're going to get rejection 99% of the time,
Absolutely, yeah.
and you have to stick through that. So but it's amazing that it's happened on all three films. And so now are all of them, those distributors, have they gotten them onto VOD platforms, or where's the future for them?
As of right now, I believe the first movie's been out for a while, DVD and Amazon Prime. But the next two I'm really excited about because we're going to have a very small, limited theatrical release, which is kind of unheard of.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we're going to be on Hulu, Amazon Prime, DVD, Blu-ray, and I believe he's going to take it to some foreign markets and try to sell. But as of right now, it's going to be a U.S. Canada type of situation. And hopefully, if I've done my job right and he's got enough interesting things to kind of push, he'll be able to sell it in other territories.
Hmm.
So it's, right now we're in that just exciting flux area. Like we literally just finished all the paperwork. I want to say 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So we're looking at a July, probably June or July release, and I'm just really excited to just have more work out there. I mean, my goal throughout this whole thing was I wanted to be an actor,
Mm.
and I'm in all three of the movies, of course, but it was one of those things I learned right away with a friend of mine, Oz Perkins. Well, I worked on one of his first movie that he co-wrote called Removal, and he wrote himself a role and he wrote the script, and the friend of his who was a director, Nick Simon, directed it, and they got it off the ground, and it turned out great. And I was just kind of looking at him going, oh, I could probably do that. If you write something good enough and people want it, then you can say, oh, and I want to play that role.
Hmm.
And so sometimes that works out. And so that was kind of an inspiration to me. And also, you hear about the stories like Matt Damon and Sylvester Stallone, where like they wrote something good enough that everybody wanted, and they were like, yeah, I want to play that role. Now, I'm not too crazy that I'm like, oh, I want to play the lead role every time, but
Hmm.
um, sometimes for production's sake, that's why I do it. But also I do love playing the lead role, if it makes sense. But
Yeah, yeah, of
uh,
course.
I don't fool myself thinking I'm Matthew McConaughey or something.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it was just this whole deal with the new distributor feels like a step up for me in the work I'm doing, and I'm just hoping that the next step's a little bigger, and the next step's a little bigger, and the next step's a little bigger.
Yeah, yeah. Now, how have you found something that often shocks filmmakers is they get a distributor and they think in their head they're going to sign this contract and they can sit back and the cash will roll in, and then
Yeah,
they're hit with the deliverables. No cash comes in, but they're hit with a list of stuff they have to do. And how did you find deliverables? And based on that experience, do you have any tips about how other people can navigate it? Because it can be a nightmare for people.
yeah. I mean, well, that was the funny thing with the first movie. The deliverables we surprisingly just had because we planned ahead. The only thing we didn't have was like, gosh, I want to say the only thing we didn't have was probably like DVD art, which usually isn't a deliverable, but they were kind of like requesting it just so they could kind of make their own.
Hmm.
And the filmmaker was like, "Oh no, I can make that," because we didn't want them to spend any money,
Yeah.
just
Yes.
so we could get that, get a fairness on the deal. And so we had a lot of our deliverables ready, and when it came to the next two movies, I know with Rabbit Days they had most of their deliverables except for like no, I think they had all their paperwork squared away because it's something that whenever I'm on a project, I think of it first, not last.
Hmm.
So like even when people are like, "Oh, we should start finding locations," I'm like, "Well, how about E&O insurance?" Like let's get the boring stuff out of the way right now because I tell you, man, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
And luckily, with all three of these movies, we were kind of ahead of the game there. And it's good that you bring it up, and other people definitely need to talk about it because there's countless filmmakers out there who are like, they put a hell of a lot of money into a movie, and then they find out like, oh, your actor shouldn't have wore that shirt with the Nike logo on it. We're going to have to blur it throughout the entire movie,
Yeah.
which I've actually seen in a movie, and it's just like, oh man,
Hmm.
and it's just really bizarre. And make sure you have the rights to every song. Make sure you have the rights to every image. We like for Dealer, for a good example. We have this great moment in the middle of the movie where my character goes to this hotel to meet these really crazy drug addicts, and they're watching this old black and white. I couldn't tell if it was like a TV show or a movie, but it looks like a gang, like a symphony playing a xylophone, and there's all these like 50s dancers and everything, and I was like, oh guys, I don't know if we can use that. And they said, oh no, it's public domain. It's just we got it straight off the public domain. We know, and so it's like all the filmmakers I was kind of working with, they were ahead of the game on that. They kind of knew that situation
Hmm.
through constant, like doing a bunch of short films and other features. They were just kind of like, oh no, we've had that happen before, so yeah, we know.
Oh, nice, nice. And so what's next for you?
I'm currently about to take a project to some financiers. Actually, working with the director Nick Simon, who I told you who was in the previous story. I kept in contact with him since 2010, working on his movie, and pitched him on another idea, and he loved it. And we've been writing and rewriting and going back and forth. And so, yeah, next month we're going to try to take it out to some actual financiers, which is going to be like a first for me, actually meeting money men with like a lot of money.
Hmm.
And so that's all exciting. And nothing could happen. I'm not, crazy. It says they might be like, "Oh, this sucks, go away," but it's just again, that's not going to stop us, and we'll be persistent. And I've got,
And
let's see,
have you created a business plan for that? Because that's the other thing is filmmakers. I mean, it's sort of funny. People write me all, from all over the world and like, hey, can you give me money? I'm trying to make a movie, and or can you introduce me to people? And people, I think people don't understand that you can't just like meet people at a party and they're going to write you a check for $50,000 or
no,
$100,000.
yeah, not no. We're actually using like industry connections through agencies and stuff to meet actual production companies who do this for a living. And so it's like they're the kind of strict people who say no probably 100 times a day.
Hmm.
So it's really dependent on the project. Um, but yeah, when it comes to like micro budget films, if you're not a documentary, it's definitely like what I did, and I don't recommend this to anybody. Is every summer I worked asbestos abatement in Alaska.
Oh man,
It's
it's
that
like combining all the worst possibilities. You just in a furnace
absolutely.
room in the middle of the
Yeah.
ocean.
And but doing that gave me like on average $2,000 a week. So I work for 4 months and I do that. I come back and I'm flush, and I can put it into movies. I can put it into hiring people. I can put it into spending this, that, or the other. The only thing I had to risk was getting cancer. So, so
Oh well,
yeah,
whatever.
so, and I don't do that anymore. But it was a great job opportunity, and I saw a lot of crazy stuff. So I don't regret it. But it was one of those things where I was like, this gives me the edge over other people because I've got the capital to kind of coast and make things happen. And sometimes it's a rich uncle, and sometimes you've got to go do a dangerous, dirty job. So,
It's, which one? Which one?
yeah, I don't have a rich uncle, so.
Yeah, yeah, me neither. Me neither. So I want to let you go. I don't want to hold you too long. But again, so which films are on Amazon Prime? Liars, Fires, and Bears. People can find on Amazon
Yeah,
Prime.
Liars, Fires, and Bears is on Amazon Prime and DVD. In this July, theatrically, Rabbit Days and Dealer will be out in, I want to say, Portland, Los Angeles, New York, Kansas City, Austin, and maybe a couple other venues. The best thing to do is to go on the Facebook pages and like them, and we'll update them with all the where they'll be playing. And then, of course, Hulu and Amazon Prime a little bit later, if not sooner. I think he wants to shrink that window just a little bit, and then once it's on there, usually USA and Canada are good to go. So
Mm.
just exciting stuff, and I hope people like it. They're both very strange movies. The
Yeah,
trailers
yeah.
are on, and they're very like they're very out there, but they're very fun and they're not boring. So I'm proud of that.
That's awesome. Well, and I mean, I always say to people like, if you don't have stars and you don't have a lot of money, be weird, because
Absolutely.
that's the thing that differentiates you, right? Is that you're not. I mean, you don't have to recoup $100 million, so you can push the envelope and take it out there into the land of the bizarre.
Oh, well, I mean, I know especially for two of the filmmakers on Dealer, they're one of their biggest influences is like David Lynch. So their section in Dealer has a giant uh, eel that I get to carry around. And if that doesn't excite you to watch the movie, then I don't know what will.
It's not often you get to see a giant eel. It's true. It's true. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time, London. I really appreciate it. There's lots of really wonderful information in there and inspiration from what you've done. And I know I've gotten a lot out of it. I'm sure other filmmakers are going to get a lot out of it as well.
I hope so because I really love the blog and I came across it accidentally on Facebook, and now I'm kind of hooked in. So I love the stuff, and it was a great opportunity to speak with you, and I'm very thankful.
Awesome. Well, keep me posted about your next project. I really want to hear how it goes.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well,
Thanks.
take care and best of luck.
You too.
Ciao.